War, Indoctrination, and Loss. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a show that will probably never stop giving, from all the content I've already produced on this channel, all the way to my latest video on its top 3 life lessons. If there's one thing I've learned, then that's the fact that Avatar is full of amazing life lessons to embrace. And when there is real value in a show, you will also find within it a lot of truth. But whenever that's the case, there will also be many dark lessons to be learned as well. Because the truth and life as a whole are full of dark realities that can haunt us. Life lessons that may be hard to accept, but brutally important to learn. And so today, we'll be tackling the top 3 darkest life lessons within all of Avatar, from the brutality of war all the way to the severe pain of loss.
How dare you! You have no idea what this war has put me through. Me personally. The Fire Nation took my mother away from me.
I'm sorry. That's something we have in common.
At the moment, things may seem more unstable than usual. I mean, from the Russia-Ukraine conflict all the way to the soaring consumer prices. It's definitely a very tumultuous time, driven by feelings of passion, anger, and overall fury. And that's also why, right now, it's so easy to get wrapped up in all of it. In the useless and dangerous game of finger-pointing. In starting to adhere to one side and claim the others to be traitors. Starting to ask for war and retaliation because after all, they started first. And don't get me wrong here, I do not support what Putin is doing. All I'm saying is that neither do I support the way Zelensky has responded to it. In my worldview, war is always to be avoided. Which is also why I hate fog of war so much. It's basically the confusion that arises from the war effort. From misleading claims of propaganda all the way to false flag operations. Oh, and feel free to pause the video if you don't understand these terms. But going back to what I was saying, I'm not telling you to hate one side or the other. I'm simply urging all of you to realize that war is always more complicated than it appears, and that oftentimes it's best to simply err on the side of peace. And to be honest, this will never be the side of any one of the warring countries. Both of them are way too invested in what they may gain from the situation. So never claim to stand with one country or the other when it comes to war. Unless you experienced it yourself, you have no idea what is real and what is simply propaganda meant to rile you up. So make the conscious choice to stand with peace. And why would that be so important? Why can't I just simply march with my fellow patriots and support the war effort? Well, because of what war leads to. Many people have a fantasized view of war, something heroic to be a part of. But Avatar perfectly puts all of this into perspective. In my opinion, few shows have captured the realities of war as well as The Last Airbender has. This show, throughout its 3 seasons, clearly burns into you the fact that war destroys everything in its path, also including who you thought you were. Because war brings out the worst within people. And I don't think I have to go deep into how destructive war actually is. Most people are already aware of that. From the extermination of an entire species of animal, to the complete massacre of an ancient and nomadic culture, all the way to smaller things like the love between 2 people. This is the nature of war. It's what results when you rid a society of its humanity and start calling them no longer humans, but rather citizens. It's what results from then using the loyalty of those citizens and then pitting them up against the others, the traitors on the other side. And this is why war brings out the worst within a person. From how Jet, a fairly young teenager, was pushed to the point of wanting to kill dozens of civilians, all the way to Hama, who after spending years in prison, thought it best to punish commoners for the crimes of their government. And as you can see, war will do things to you you never thought you were capable of. A truth that is best witnessed when we see how scarred Katara still is about her mother's death. A scar that leads her down such a dark path that she ends up using a technique she swore to never use again and to crave the death of another human. Heck, if you think about it, even the pacifist air nomad Gyatso was probably pushed to commit some horrible acts just before he died. I mean, otherwise, I really don't see how he would have been able to have taken out these many soldiers at once. And so watch out. Whenever war is around the corner, it will likely reignite an ancient tribalistic instinct. All I urge you to do is to make sure you don't get dragged in by the seductive nature of war.
It is the strict policy of Ba Sing Se that the war not be mentioned within the walls. Constant news of an escalating war would throw the citizens of Ba Sing Se into a state of panic. Our economy would be ruined. Our peaceful way of life, our traditions would disappear. In silencing talk of conflict, Ba Sing Se remains a peaceful, orderly utopia. The last one on Earth.
You can't keep the truth from all these people. They have to know.
There is no war within the walls. Here we are safe. Here we are free.
Is information dangerous? When first watching the show, you may get the feeling that yes, it certainly must be, right? From the way in which Admiral Zhao used the library's knowledge to further his war efforts and kill the Moon Spirit, all the way to how Zuko keeps on gathering information to always track down the gang. But what we soon realize is that information itself is neither good nor bad, neither safe nor dangerous. Just as it can be used by some for bad, so too can it be used for good. But there is one thing that certainly is dangerous, and that is the lack and suppression of information. I mean, if you think about it, the only reason Zhao and Zuko did what they did was not because they possessed information, but rather because they possessed limited information. Zhao, for example, he only killed the Moon Spirit because he lacked the additional information on how his actions would also negatively impact him and his own nation as well. And Zuko is actually an even better example here. He kept on using information to track down Aang up until the point where he started to learn new things, gather new information, and so because of it, realized the errors in his way. It was only because of additional information that he ended up changing course. Only because he was able to learn more, not less. And so, we need to seriously watch out for people who want to control what information and how much of it we're allowed to consume. They, for sure, are the ones who are afraid of information. They are the ones to claim that information is dangerous. But they're not completely wrong either. Their framing is just off, because in truth, information is dangerous, but only for one reason, and that's because it empowers the individual. And of course, whatever does that threatens the ones that already hold power. Once the individual learns that he is in control of his own life, is when the ones who want to control him start to lose all their might. It's then that the individual starts to realize that he never needed them in the first place, starts to realize that his limited knowledge was keeping him enslaved. As a famous quote says, "I freed 1,000 slaves, I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." And so, once again, ignorance, the lack of knowledge, that's what's truly dangerous. It will keep you in chains and turn you into a mere pawn for the people who are trying to control you. It'll rob you of all agency and leave you there with an empty husk of your true self. And therefore, watch out for the ones who may want to control what you can or cannot know. From the Dai Li who prohibit any mention of the war, all the way to the state-run Fire Nation schools who have altered past events. These and many more examples in Avatar show how it's possible to keep people ignorant. And maybe you're wondering, why would anyone even do such a thing? Well, do humans like power? And I think the answer to that question is quite obvious. And so therefore, what gives one more power than if they get to decide what can and can't be known to the public? After all, if an individual gains power over his life by gathering new information, then suppressing such information gives you power over them. And I think we can agree that, in this world of ours, there are more than enough people who constantly seek power. Oh, and one more thing, never assume yourself to be above any of this either. If you think it could never happen to you, then realize that turning people ignorant is incredibly easy. All you really need is the passage of time and space. Just take a look at the library and all its lost knowledge, or the Northern Air Temple and how the Mechanist people were completely ignorant to the importance of the things they were destroying. So do be careful, because as powerful as knowledge is, so too is it fragile. If you want it to prevail, you need to fight like hell for it. But why would you may ask? I thought ignorance was bliss? Well, my friend, you thought wrong. Do you know why ignorance is so dangerous? Well, because ignorance leads to separation between people, and that separation then leads to more and more ignorance. And then, this cycle continues on until it eventually culminates in war. And really, it's only through ignorance that war can even take place. It's only when you're able to manipulate the ignorance of thousands and convince them that the unknown other needs to be killed, that war becomes a possibility in the first place. Because if all your soldiers knew more about the people they were shooting at, if they only had enough information to know that they too are only human, then so many wars could have and would have been avoided. But sadly, when some people want to control others, they'll always make sure to keep them as ignorant as possible. And then, to shift the blame away from themselves, they'll manipulate the public into believing the other is always at fault. A truth that the episode Zuko Alone perfectly captured, where we are introduced to a town so hurt and destroyed by the war that it didn't take much for them to mistrust the humanity of a firebender, for them to get stuck within their own ignorance.
Happy birthday, my son. If only I could have helped you. Leaves from the vine.
Loss can be such a disheartening thing. It's a feeling unlike any other. A feeling only felt when you lose someone truly important to you. A feeling so strong it can leave most people lost. But what makes it truly hard to overcome is the fact that loss is inescapable. It's a sensation that never truly leaves you. From Iroh's tale, where we suffer alongside him and mourn the death of his son, all the way to the very beginning of the show where Aang discovers Gyatso's corpse. In these and many other moments, Avatar perfectly displays the cruelty of loss. It's not something that you feel once and then it's gone, but rather, it's a sorrow that haunts you when you least expect it, and then, after doing so, it leaves you empty on the inside all over again. But that being said, it's not hopeless either. It may be a feeling that will never truly leave you, but if you are ready to accept what happened, it has the possibility to become something truly beautiful. And I know that this is obviously easier said than done, but whenever you are ready, you will hopefully realize that the only reason you felt this much agony is because of all the good that person had previously brought to your life. After all, you can only feel real loss if what came before was brimming with love and passion. And so, in due time, allow yourself to start shedding tears of joy rather than sorrow, to start remembering all the amazing memories you shared, to start loving and living once again. Because as hard as it may sound, loss will never leave your heart, so try to accept its presence and make the best of its cruel agony. Thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Over here we use philosophy and psychology to better understand life and to find our own meaning within it. There are many exciting things coming up, so if I were you, I'd subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date. See ya!
True freedom can only be achieved when oppressive governments are torn down.